Lesson of Chapter 10, Section 1. While I've warned that this particular chapter can be pretty tough, this first section should be a review. This is on the Pythagorean theorem, which, if you remember from a little bit of middle school work, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But we're going to look at a right triangle first and designate the parts. So I'm going to draw a right triangle here. There's our right triangle. And usually the legs, which are A and B there, it doesn't really matter which one's A and which one's B, but C will always be the hypotenuse, which is opposite the right angle. So this is the hypotenuse. And I would take some basic notes of this so that you have them available. Since you know you'll be able to take a test with your notes, you might go ahead and do this drawing into your notes. And then off to the side, write the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we're going to be using this quite a bit in this first section. We won't use it a ton after this, but you'll see some of the need for it and why we're learning about square roots in this chapter. Please look at a squared plus b squared equals c squared. How would you solve if you had a and b for c? Well, what's the opposite of something squared? It's a square root. So we're going to have to be using square roots throughout this chapter, and that's what this chapter is on. All right, let me erase this, and I'll give you an actual problem. Let you see what type of work we'll be doing. All right. So the first type of problem gives a square tile, but it's in the shape of a diamond like this. So this is a tile in somebody's bathroom or kitchen or something like that. And this particular tile has a length across there, which is unknown, but it's 6 inches around every side. And it's a square or a rhombus. I think it's a square. It's a square tile. Okay, so since it's a square, we know that that right there is the right angle. And if we wanted to find this unknown part right there so that we could cut or lay the tile properly, let's just put an X there. We would just have to flow it into a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so here's why you have to know the hypotenuse versus the legs. X in this case has to be the hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle. That means that 6 is A and the other 6 is also A. So we have 6 squared plus 6 squared equals c squared. Or you could also write x squared depending upon what you want. So 36 plus 36 equals c squared, or 72 equals c squared. Now, here's where you have to finish solving using a calculator to estimate it. The opposite of something squared is a square root, so we'll take a square root of both sides. And for this one section, you're actually going to estimate an answer. So you'll take your calculator out and do the square root of 72, and that's equal to approximately 8.5. Just look at the directions on your homework to be able to do that. All right, so there's one problem. That's finding the hypotenuse. Let's erase this and do another problem. I'll try to give you multiple examples so you'll know what you're doing. These examples will tie to your book, so don't be afraid to follow along in your book if you're trying to learn something and struggling a little bit, and don't be afraid to ask for help from me in tutoring if you need it too. All right, so the next problem, we've got a right triangle. So I'll draw a right triangle here. And we've got an unknown leg here. We have 5 on this side and a 13 over here. Now you would need to notice, because it doesn't say that that's a B always, you need to notice that that missing side is a leg. This 13 is opposite the right angle, so that's got to be the hypotenuse. So I would do, since they labeled it a B, 5 squared plus b squared equals 13 squared. Just plug in your A, your B, and your C. 5 squared is 25 plus the unknown b squared equal to 169. Subtract the 25. Even though we're dealing with something squared, it's still pretty much the same way to solve. Get the variable on the left by itself with the hidden positive 1 in front of it, and then we can deal with the square. Now we've got b squared equals 144. Take the square roots of both sides, and b technically is equal to plus or minus 12. Remember that when you take the square root of something to solve for something squared, you should get two answers. Now, that said, we know this is a triangle, so it's impossible to have a negative side on a triangle, so we can go ahead and narrow it down to just b equals 12. All right, so there's how you would solve for a leg. Now, you can also do what's called the converse of the Pythagorean theorem. Sorry, trying to erase here, where they give you three numbers and they say, is this a right triangle? Well, all you have to do is see if the three numbers work in the Pythagorean theorem, and then you can say, yes, it is, or no, it's not a right triangle. So let me give you at least one example of that before you start your Math Excel assignment. Here are the numbers that we're given. We're told a bunch of different sets of numbers, and you're asked, is this a right triangle? The first is 6, 24, and 25. Whoops, that's 5. Let me check how much time we've got left. Still doing good, only 6 minutes in, so we got plenty of time. So to check and see if this is one, you would do 6 squared plus 24 squared equals 25 squared and see if it works. Remember, the longest side will always be the C or the hypotenuse, and so that makes the other two have to be the legs. So 6 squared is 36 plus 24 squared equals 612. That's 24 squared. 24 squared was 576 plus 36 is 612. Now 25 squared, this one I happen to know is 625. And so I can tell that that's not equal to 625. This is not a right triangle. Okay? Now let's try a different one. Let's try this one, 10, 24, and 26. Again, the longest side will always be C, so we'll do 10 squared plus 24 squared equals 26. 26 squared. Messed that one up a little bit. Let me erase that. (26 squared). All right, so 10 squared we know is 100. 24 squared we just learned was 576. Well, let's see what 26 squared is. Using a calculator, I see that that is 676. So you can tell that 676 equals 100 plus 576. This is a right triangle, and so you would say, yes, it's a right triangle. We're good. And you might have an answer like that. Guys, that's really all there is to this section. Short little instructional video. This is something you've done in the past in middle school, so a bit of a reminder. You just need a calculator because you're going to be taking squares and square roots of things. Try out Math Excel. Make sure you read the question carefully because you have to answer it right. But then remember that you get multiple chances, at least 2 or 3 chances on it, which should help your scores. Don't go too fast. You only have one assignment of 10 questions this whole week. So I'm hoping that this is kind of a light week for y'all. You can figure out how Math Excel works and get to going on that. And I think you'll enjoy doing your homework on that so you don't have to keep scanning and taking pictures and all that mess that we were doing last week. All right. Have a good week and a good Easter break. I look forward to talking to you again soon.